When Putin confidently attacked Kursk with tens of thousands of troops, including North Korean men, he thought victory was assured. He believed victory was imminent with Russian tanks' destructive force. Putin didn't anticipate Ukraine to see his scheme from afar and set a more deadly trap. Putin anticipated defeat, but Ukraine scrapped thousands of Russian tanks, ending Russia's counteroffensive. How did Ukraine recover, and why did Putin keep making mistakes? This film examines Ukraine's excellent plan, the Russian army's significant losses, and Kursk's prospects in the current setting. Strategy and first failure. Russia's efforts during the Kursk counteroffensive have focused on establishing control east of the Snagost River. While achieving limited success in restricting northern supply lines and pressing Ukraine's bridgehead in Kursk, Ukrainian forces have strategically withdrawn from areas like the Olivsky Forest and Darino to reinforce Myloloknaya. Despite this, Russia's broader goal of capturing all river settlements to disrupt Ukrainian supplies remains unfulfilled. The Snagost River has proven a formidable defensive barrier for Ukraine, with fortified positions and elevated vantage points allowing Ukrainian troops to inflict heavy losses on advancing Russian forces. Stalled at the river, Russia shifted its strategy, focusing on breaking through Tolsty Lug to the north. Capturing this position would enable Russia to target supply routes and mount a two-front assault on Novoevo-Novko, a key Ukrainian stronghold. Initial attempts to take Tolsty Lug were met with fierce Ukrainian resistance. By November 11th, 5 Russian offensives had been repelled, resulting in over 300 casualties among Russian and allied North Korean forces. Ukraine also destroyed 18 of 29 heavy equipment pieces, demonstrating preparedness for the December counteroffensive. Recognizing the importance of Tolsty Lug, Putin redirected efforts to secure this strategic point, aiming to stretch Ukrainian defenses and gain a tactical advantage. The trap opens. Russia launched its assault near Tolsty Lug, attempting to bypass a major water reservoir to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. This tactic mirrored previous failed attempts to retake Novoevo-Novko. Anticipating the move, Ukraine had set up drone-based surveillance with thermal imaging around the reservoir for early warnings. When Russian APCs approached, Ukraine's defenses were activated. Using Javelin anti-tank missiles with a range of 1.5 miles and heat warheads capable of penetrating heavy armor, Ukrainian forces swiftly destroyed the APC convoy. The burning vehicles left few survivors, and those attempting to flee into nearby forests were neutralized by Ukraine's FPV drones stationed in the area. This initial wave of Russia's attack ended disastrously, highlighting Ukraine's preparedness and tactical foresight. However, the offensive may have served another purpose for Russia: gathering intelligence. Sacrificing the APCs could have been a deliberate move to probe Ukraine's firing positions and response times, hinting at a larger strategy to come. Russian mistake and final blow. Russian forces advanced with confidence, sending waves of 6-10 armored vehicles, including tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, to overpower Ukraine's defenses. This brute force tactic, a hallmark of Putin's strategy throughout the war, relied on sheer numbers to break enemy lines. However, Ukraine anticipated this approach and prepared meticulously. Before Russia's APCs scouted the area, Ukraine heavily mined the reservoir region, leaving Russian forces with no safe alternative but to follow a predetermined path. This route was a deliberate trap. Russian tanks were funneled onto a path blocked by Dragon's Teeth, concrete pyramids designed to immobilize armored vehicles. This tactic, reminiscent of World War II, effectively stopped the advancing convoy in its tracks. Immobilized and exposed, Russian tanks became easy targets. Ukrainian artillery, Javelin missiles, and FPV drones decimated the advancing waves. Despite heavy losses, Russian forces continued their assaults, but their mechanized units were systematically destroyed. Ukrainian units, including the 225th Assault Battalion and the 36th Marine Brigade, relentlessly counterattacked, leaving fields near Tolsty Lug, Nizhny Klin, and Zeleny Shliakhnop littered with destroyed tanks and vehicles. Social media images showcase the devastation, underscoring Ukraine's tactical foresight. Each destroyed tank and vehicle revealed that Ukraine had anticipated and outmaneuvered Russia's plans from the start, turning the battlefield into a graveyard for Putin's outdated strategies. Predictability of Russian tactics. Several Russian tanks were left abandoned on Dragon's Teeth, their crews having fled. Many were destroyed by javelin missiles and howitzer fire as Ukraine strategically forced them into exposed firing lines. The battlefield, described by Euromaidan as a tank and armored vehicle cemetery, symbolizes Russia's humiliating failure to bypass Tolsty Lug's reservoir. With Novoivodinovka still unconquered, Putin faces a dilemma. This failed operation underscores Putin's willingness to sacrifice soldiers and equipment in relentless pursuit of his goals. Ukraine's trap devastated Russian forces so rapidly that replenishing men and machines became impossible. According to Ukraine's 24th Assault Battalion, Kursk stockpiles are now likely depleted, leaving Putin with only infantry assaults as an option, an approach doomed to fail. FPV drones and precise firepower ensure that Russian foot soldiers stand little chance against Ukraine's defenses. The operation also exposed critical Russian missteps, underestimating Ukraine's strength in Tolsty Lug and repeating flawed tactics weeks after an earlier failure revealed a lack of adaptability. Between November 11th and December 1st, Ukraine fortified Novoivodinovka, anticipating Russia's predictable strategies. This predictability has plagued Putin for over a decade, as highlighted by his 2008 invasion of Georgia. During the 5-day war, Russia deployed poorly trained conscripts and faced severe logistical issues, resulting in the loss of 93 military vehicles and significant embarrassment. Despite promises of reform after Georgia, Russia's approach in Ukraine remains unchanged: unprepared troops, outdated equipment, and predictable offensives. This lack of innovation allowed Ukraine to anticipate and counter Russia's moves effectively. In Tolsty Lug, Ukraine demonstrated superior planning, leveraging Russia's predictability to execute devastating anti-tank traps. The broader implications highlight systemic issues within Russia's military, proving that little has changed since its earlier failures on the international stage. Strategic mistakes and layered defense. Layered defensive knowledge by Ukraine was also crucial. Euromaidan claims that Ukraine's multiple defenses helped them trap Russia. Our incident description showed how this defensive method works. When Russia sent APCs, Ukraine utilized javelins and FPV drones as the first layer. Second were the field mines, and third were the Dragon's Teeth along Ukraine's compelled Russia's way. Another layer of drones, javelins, and artillery followed. The defense post reported in December 2022 that Ukraine has always used layered defense. Ukraine uses aircraft, drone patrols, ground-based anti-air missiles, and small ground formations to combat Russia's drones. There are many similarities to Tolsty Lug's approach to Russian tanks. Ukraine defends against Russian advantages using multiple methods. It builds several, frequently in stages, to drive Russia to respond as Ukraine wishes. It's clever defense. Russia's inability to figure it out shows Putin's tactical incompetence. When the mechanized divisions trying to circumvent the reservoir in Tolsty Lug found mines in the field, they should have realized Ukraine was trapping them. Russia should have retreated and reorganized, finding a new route to attack Novoivodinovka, even if it meant losing tanks to javelin strikes. But Russia kept going deeper and deeper, and its tanks were devastated. Putin's error is the inability to learn. Strategic weakness from his inability to modify his methods allowed Ukraine to construct its trap. Russia's equipment issue is another major mistake. Russian forces are trying to reach Novoivodinovka on foot, claiming that their supply lines are broken and they can't get the tanks and armored vehicles they need for the attacks. Russia's equipment shortage is the problem. Forbes stated that Ukraine created a road of casualties past Seliny Shlak. Russia tried to enter Novoivodnovka this way. According to Forbes, the 225th Assault Battalion claims that the fields are mined, the route is targeted by our artillery, and every movement is meticulously observed. A video shows at least 10 destroyed vehicles along the road. Forbes writes that Putin is continuing to attack along the road to Seliny Shlak, and the trail of casualties shows Russia running out of equipment. Russia initially attacked in October and early November with BTR-82 infantry fighting vehicles. Kursk frontline soldiers received at least 40 of these vehicles. By December, BTR-82s are scarce. BMP and BMD tracked fighting vehicles, a decline from the BTR-82, armored tractors, and Buran trucks are among the new wreckages on the road of casualties. Soon, these inferior vehicles will disappear, leaving Russia to use whatever makeshift mechanized units it can supply to its men, if any. Russian forces are fighting in their nation. Putin either runs out of armored vehicles in Russia or has built up logistics so poorly that the vehicles Russia does have aren't getting to the soldiers who need them. Russia is using trucks instead of tanks and deploying soldiers on foot when they run out due to the dire situation. Russia lost 364 tanks and trucks between August 6 and November 26. With the Tolstoy Lug trap sprung, hundreds more essential pieces of equipment are gone. What does this signify for Ukraine's Kursk defense? Russia had some success. It reclaimed 40% of Ukraine's initial land. Having 5,000 soldiers, over 2,000 helps. Putin's meat grinder techniques work. According to Tolstoy Lug, Russia has yet to discover how to attack Ukraine's most entrenched sites in Kursk. It's merely using tanks and men to beat them down, but Ukraine's layered defenses and superior tactics defeat them. Will Ukraine repel Russia's counteroffensive? That's uncertain. This incident shows that Ukraine is outsmarting Russia every step of the way. Russia will need tens of thousands of troops and hundreds of heavy weaponry to reclaim Kursk. A hollow victory for a nation with manpower and equipment issues. What do you think about Ukraine's Tolstoy Lug trap? Can Ukraine keep using such deception to stop the Russian army, or will Putin sacrifice enough men and equipment to break past Ukraine's defenses? Answers to these questions will shape the battle and the area. Watch what happens next.